Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Grace. I'm here to yap about all the things that I want to yap about. And if you want to stick around for that, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below to be notified when I post new videos. Anyway, I'm just making my return on my YouTube game. So it's going to be a whole lot of whatever. Okay. So today's video, as you see in the title, is the books that I read in 2024. I had a kind of brutal reading year last year. Happy 2025, by the way. Can't wait to see what this year holds. Yeah, so should be an interesting one. But I do have a goal for this year to read 75 books, which might seem extreme compared to the fact that I also this fucking picture is going to drive me crazy. Hold on, I need to fix that. I fixed it. We're all good. It might seem extreme considering I didn't hit my goal this year, but I've read 65 books in years past. And look, we just got to set goals for ourselves, okay? Let me know how many books you're reading if you have a goal, and what your favorite book from last year was, and what you're excited to read. Just let me know what's going on in your reading world because I would love to know. I've put together a little presentation of all the books I read, so I'm going to go through them and share my thoughts. So I'm gonna get my lovely, cute little presentation here. Beautiful. Also, make sure to follow me on social media at Grace Elizabeth Barrett. 2 R's, 2 T's in the last name on most platforms. I mainly use Instagram. I'm starting to use TikTok a little bit. I don't even know where my phone is, girl. She is somewhere else. We are really focused on the YouTube game today because I'm just like, let me just leave my phone wherever the fuck. Okay, so these are the books that I read in 2024. Also, I used Canva to design this. I have a creative job and I just sometimes don't feel like building my own templates. So here we are. Okay, so the first book I read of the year was James Baldwin's If Beale Street Could Talk. What a lovely way, not lovely, like that's not like the best word, but a great read to start the year. It was 5 stars for me. It made me feel like the year was going to be a great year for reading, and then unfortunately it wasn't. But basically, the overview of this book is that it's a love story in the face of racial injustice, and there's a lot of really just like tragic, heartbreaking themes in here, but it's really well done. I need to read more James Baldwin. I've only read, I think, 1 or 2, maybe only one of his books, and it's all the way at the end of my bookshelf, so I can't remember the name of it. So I want to read more of him. And I also need to read more of like other classic Black authors. And I guess we just need to increase those numbers. Okay, so yeah, like I said, it's beautifully heartbreaking story of young love in the face of racial inequality. The characters were really well done, but it wasn't this like huge character study, but I felt like really connected to the characters, which I really like because I'm a huge character driven reader. I really like to latch on, and I think that's pretty common, but like some people are fine with like not knowing anything about a character, but it helps you just helps you understand their motives more, why they're doing certain things. Like it's so interesting to see when characters like self-sabotage themselves, and you can see, well, self-sabotage themselves it's a little redundant, but when they self-sabotage because you know that they have that behavior, or you know they're actually really good at something, or they really like this person because you have all the inside knowledge. So yeah, it was really well done. I do need to watch the movie now. I think I'm going to start a new series eventually too on this channel of reading the book and then watching the movie or show, because there's a couple of books obviously that I've read that have been made into shows. One is actually coming in later, which is Lessons in Chemistry, was made into a show. Yeah, I think even The Secret Life of Bees is made into a movie. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on here. Emma. So this is, sorry, I'm just looking up here also because this is where I have all the books I read last year. Okay, moving on. Second book of the year was Tina Fey's memoir, Bossy Pants. Memoir, obviously about Tina Fey's life. I don't usually rate memoirs. You'll see a little bit of a contradiction in this because there are some books that are technically memoirs, or like I'm thinking of There's Always This Year, but I try not to rate memoirs because I feel like it's like rating someone's life, but I might change that next year of just being like, would I recommend it? Yes or no? My thoughts on this book, as you can see, this book gave me the ick, okay? I felt like she was trying so hard to be funny and it was so cringy. I am not okay, so also just for background on me, I'm not like a huge celebrity person. Like I don't like I'm not obsessed with any celebrities. I was really like detached from that growing up, like because I didn't watch a lot of TV and movies and stuff like that. I think that's why like I watched way more YouTube and stuff like that back in the day. And still to this day, I really don't watch a lot of movies and TV. I'm trying to get better because there are shows and stuff I feel like I need to watch. And yeah, anyway, so this really gave me the ick. So I don't have anything like I don't think Tina Fey isn't funny. Like I think she is funny. I've seen like episodes of 30 Rock and SNL. Like I think she does a good job, but this book just like really gave me the ick. And I was like, oh girl. Also, again, like the cover, again, this is an older book, so maybe this would have landed with me back then, but this just like really made me cringe. I mean, it's always interesting to hear about a celebrity's life and how they got into the business, especially this business of Hollywood. It's like obviously very crazy and gets crazier. And it's interesting to see how they kind of like bob and weave through. But yeah, this was definitely cringy for me. Also, a very weird theme this year. I read a lot of memoirs, mainly about women, which is actually funny because my next one is the Britney Spears memoir, The Woman in Me. Obviously, this is about her life. It spans from her childhood to adulthood, so it's not focused on a particular time. Again, I gave it no star rating because it's a memoir. I did enjoy this. It felt a little bit I don't know if she wrote it or if she had a ghostwriter. Either way, I don't think it was like the most well-written memoir ever. Um, but I thought it's again always interesting to hear about these women's lives, especially Britney Spears, because this came out after all of the conservatorship stuff happened. So I was like, I really want to know if she absolutely like trashes on her family in this. And like I said in my thoughts here, I love to hear from her perspective, but wish she trashed on her family more. LOL. I do actually wish she did that. She did talk about how her dad was like pretty manipulative and abusive and all of that, but I think there was a lot of other stuff that I wish she had gone into, but of course, I'm sure it was a pretty like tumultuous time while she was writing this anyway, so I can understand that. I can understand also not wanting to trash your family completely. But yeah. So, I don't know. I don't know. I wanted like more. I wanted to know more. And I think that's just because I'm nosy and I wanted to know like the background of what she was actually going through and like is it true that she was just basically being like pill fed and like was she even like conscious, you know what I mean? Like during all of these years, like it's just so sad to see like celebrities. And again, we don't see other people who just happen to go through this stuff in real life, but we see this because she was like at a crazy point of her career, right? She had like an a Las Vegas residency and all of this stuff. And she was just so overworked and tired and like didn't have control over anything in her life. And her family is keeping all of her money and all of this weird stuff. So yeah, I mean, it was interesting to hear, but I wish she had shared a little bit more and bashed her family because I would have. I don't know. Maybe she's just like really sweet and nice. I don't know. Sorry, my nose is running because it's so cold outside. Um, but yeah. Okay, moving on. The fourth book I read was The Mountain and the Sea by Ray Naylor. This is basically a book about humans understanding there's been this intelligent life form of an octopus that has its own language and its own culture. And it sets off this like high stakes competition to dominate the world. So think of like the moon landing, but under the water. Like every country is like trying to figure out what to do with this little octopi. I don't know if that's the plural octopuses. I don't know. Anyway, I gave this 4 stars. I read this. So I'm part of 2 book clubs. Both of them are at the company that I work for. One is our like general book club, and the other one is actually one that I lead, where it's for our women's ERG or employee resource group, and we only read books written by women. So you'll see a couple of those, and I'll point those out. But yeah, this is something I would have never picked up for myself, like I wrote, but I really enjoyed the writing and the story a lot. It was very it was long, but it didn't feel long. I think they did a really good job of like pushing the plot forward and not making it super like choppy or like segmented. I feel like the flow of it was really well done. So I really enjoyed this. Again, not something that I would have picked up by myself, which you'll see. The other book club is very interesting in the books that we read. And I'll point those out too, just to show you, because I do have some complaints about some other books, but I really enjoyed this. Very different kind of sci-fi fantasy, but also like some realness to it, which I like about some fantasy, like, or fantasy and sci-fi. Some stuff is just like, girl, like that is so far-fetched that it's just not even funny. Like it's not even like remotely based on something factual, but that's my personal opinion. Okay, another female memoir that I read was Wildflower by Aurora James. So this is obviously a memoir about her life, developing her brand, and okay, this grammatically is probably not good on my part. And she also founded the 15% Pledge. So I didn't know who she was before I read this book. This is a book that we read for my book club, for the women's book club, and I didn't know that she had founded this pledge. I didn't know about the pledge. So if you don't know about it, it's basically where companies pledge to take, I believe it's 15% of their, I don't know if it's profit or revenue, probably profit, and donating it to, I think it's Black-owned businesses, or is it saying 15% of the revenue? Gosh, I can't remember now because we read this book so long ago. Encourages retailers to pledge at least 15% of their shelf space. Okay, so I had it flipped around. Basically, they have to say 15% of their shelves go to Black-owned businesses. And of course, now I can't remember who pledged. Nordstrom, Sephora, Macy's, Ulta, Rent the Runway, a bunch of other places that you can check out if you just Google 15% pledge, or it's just 15percentpledge.org, and you can learn more about that. But it was super interesting too, because her brand is super sustainable and sourced from the actual makers of the products in their native countries. And it was just a really, really interesting story. I really adored this. I would recommend it. Also, the cover is just so stunning, and I just love it so much. Like I said, I didn't know anything about Aurora before I read this, but I loved learning more about her life, and I loved learning more about her journey and how she met all of these people. Again, it's very interesting to see how, for celebrities, and like they say, if you just work hard, it's like, no, like these people have like chance encounters, and I love that for them, but like don't pretend like this is a normal thing. But yeah, and her I can't remember what her brand is called, but what is it called? Brother Vellies. I mean, the shoes are just like gorgeous. I would never buy them because they're $5 million. Not really, but they're $335 per pair of shoes. Depending on which ones you get, but they are gorgeous. I mean, like the heels too. And I don't like wear a lot of heels anymore, but like $685 for a pair of pumps is just like not something that I personally am looking for. But they're stunning. They're like beautiful. Okay. So yes, I would recommend this one of the three that I read earlier in the year. So yeah, there's that. Okay. Next, we have Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino. This is basically an essay collection about self-delusion and how that shapes us growing up. I gave this 2 stars. I really didn't like this. Like I said, it felt very pretentious. It felt very much like, I'm gonna use all of this like, and it's well written, but not in a way that made me feel it was well written in the fact that she wanted to prove that she was a good writer, and I'm like, "You don't need to do that. Like, girl, you already have a book. Like, you don't need to do that." And I was talking to a friend of mine who also read this, and she felt the same way, and I was like, "Okay, maybe, it's not just me." I think there was, like, good parts of it. I think there's a lot of interesting, like, patterns and stuff that we can identify from our experiences growing up and how that's shaped us into who we are today, and how, especially when we're younger, we're, like, so conscious of other people's thoughts of us, especially in our teenage years, and how that makes us more self-conscious as we get older or not, right? Like, what is the when do you basically have that feeling of like, fuck this, I don't care what anybody thinks about me, kind of thing. Um, and sorry, I'm just like moving so I can sit differently in my chair. But yeah, so I didn't really enjoy this. I just felt like it was just like trying too hard. And I think she's a pretty popular um like columnist or something. I don't know. Girl, I didn't look into it because I was like, oh, I don't need to. Okay. Next, I read Something to Live For. This is about a man named Andrew who wants this perfect life. So he basically lies about it to all of his coworkers, saying he has this wife and children and all of this stuff. And then he learns it's more important to live your life than fake it. Did I say I gave this 3 stars? I thought it was pretty meh. Like there were some funny moments that I was definitely laughing out loud, but it wasn't like something I would really recommend. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I think there were some points where I was actually laughing out loud on the subway, which is very rare. I liked this writer's like kind of like quip and um sarcasm, and like I think he's British if I remember correctly. This is based in the UK, so I think they have like I really like their banter, and like that's was really fun to read. But I think it was just like meh, not like wouldn't go crazy for it, wouldn't reread it, but it was like decent to read. Okay, so this is another one of my book club reads, which is called Wise Gals, the Spies Who Built the CIA and Changed the Future of Espionage. This basically dives into the world of the CIA, like at the very beginning, and like the kind of tagline says, it talks about the women who shaped its future. I gave this 3 stars. Like I said here, a little dry at times, but enjoyed learning about these women who led the way. That should be led, not lead. Can you tell my brain is on holiday break? And yeah, I did enjoy this. It felt, like I said, just pretty nonfiction at some points, which is just sometimes hard because you need kind of the factual and the like kind of boring stuff. I will say the one thing I did struggle with was they basically, because not all of the women worked together all the time. They were in different countries, so they were kind of jumping back and forth, and I feel like personally, I didn't get a good grasp on each of the characters to know who was who throughout the book. Like, I had to keep going back and being like reminding myself, "Okay, this is the one who was from here, or from whatever." Like, I just needed more of that kind of stuff before going into, like, the really actually interesting pieces of their lives where they're in different countries conducting these like spy missions basically. But yeah, it was super interesting. I think anytime they talk about kind of government agencies in this way, especially with how women kind of broke the glass ceiling in a way of like stepping up, being allowed to be more than a secretary, right? That's like super uncommon back then. But I believe it was like 5 or 6 women in this book, and I was like, let's go, like. And I actually, funny enough, was on I think I was on HBO Max last night looking for something to watch. I can't remember if it was Max or Peacock or one of them, one of the too many services that I have for streaming that I don't even fucking use because I don't watch that many TV shows. Anyway, and it was funny. It was about a woman in the CIA, and her, of course I fell asleep, but of her life. And I meant to look to see if they were similar names or whatever, but I think all of these women are passed on now. Um, but anyway, yeah, so I really liked it. It was very interesting. Not sure I would recommend it necessarily. I think, again, it's a little bit dry at certain points, but very interesting to see the growth of women over the years. Then I read Deep Sky. This is probably the most like interesting in a good way book that I read this year. And it's basically about a small group that leaves Earth to save humanity, but an explosion happens on board and they need to understand what happens before continuing on their mission. One thing I'm really pissed off about, so I use thrift books a lot. So if you want to ever order books online that are used, go to thriftbooks.com. I personally really enjoy them. I'm not obviously sponsored by them or anything, but they sent this book to me without this fucking dust jacket, and I am appalled. Okay. I want this dust jacket. Look how beautiful it is. And I just have the like ugly black, just regular book cover because it didn't come with a dust jacket. It's a hardcover that didn't come with it. And I was actually upset about that. I gave this 3 stars. I found it to be just like fun, but twisty and turny enough where it kept me engaged. I really liked this author's writing, and I would definitely recommend it if you're into kind of like the sci-fi fantasy world. It felt like a pretty quick read, even though it's relatively long. And yeah, I just overall really, really enjoyed it. I think they did a good job with the characters again, something that I'm probably going to know more throughout this. If you can't tell, I like the characters, but yeah, it was good, kept me engaged. I didn't really expect not the twists, but more of like who was doing what and who was lying and who was like the bad guy. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. So that was the 9th book I read. The 10th book I read was The Psychopath Test. This is basically about a journalist, John Ronson, who I always want to say Ron Johnson, and I know that's not right. But he researches psychopaths, doctors, scientists, and it's more people in that industry itself. I gave this 2 stars, and like I said, I simply think I dislike John Ronson. Also, Ron Johnson sounds so much better. I also read what's the other one about being canceled? So You've Been Publicly Shamed. I also didn't like that book. I think he just does like I will say the one about being the publicly shamed one seemed a little bit more research to me. This book just felt like basic history of psychopaths. So if you want to learn more about that, go for it. I think there's probably better books out there that you could read to get that information. Okay. Then I read Stamped from the Beginning. This is it's a chunker, but it's basically an in-depth look at how racism spread in the United States. I gave this 3 stars. I personally think I read it at a time where I probably should have sat with it a little bit longer. That's on me. I think it's a very good read, but I personally like The New Jim Crow so much. I think that book is so fucking well done that it's hard to like go to a different book. I think this was more factual, whereas The New Jim Crow really felt like a story. Like, again, she just did a really good job with that. I highlighted so much stuff in this book, because I feel like there's obviously just so much importance in these books. I think I just didn't sit long enough with it for it to be a better read for me. But again, a good book if you want to learn more about racism in America. And yeah, I think it was very well done nonetheless. I think it's just nonfiction can be tough sometimes, for me to read, especially like during times of the year where I'm like, I probably shouldn't be reading nonfiction. Okay. Then I read 100 Years of Solitude. This is the story of the Buendia family and their conflict between the desire for solitude and love. I gave this 2 stars. And my thoughts here, I'm sorry, what the actual fuck was this book? Okay. I was reading it and I was like, Wait, this has family lover dynamics? This has incest? What the fuck? Okay. Um, this book was also so confusing and hard to follow. I know it's a classic, and I know that a lot of people love it. I'm really sorry. I disliked this book a lot. I just was so fucking confused the whole time, and I think the element of the, like, loving your cousin or your aunt or whatever, I can't even remember now because I think I just, like, was traumatized by this book and had to block it out. But girl, mm-mm, not for me. Some of these classics, I'm like, who likes this? Also, why was this not, and again, because the writing is good, right? Like, is that why it's a classic? Like, I just don't know how we determine what a classic is anymore. Okay, I need to hurry up. I'm going slow. I'm 25 minutes in book 13. Okay, so next we read this for my book club, The Firekeeper's Daughter. This is a murder mystery meets love story meets beautiful tribe culture book. I really enjoyed this, even though it's technically YA, which I don't read a lot of. YA stands for young adult. I gave this 4 stars. I would highly recommend this, even though it's long and even though there's some cringy parts. I really enjoyed this. There's a lot going on in this book. Like, there's hockey, there's the tribal culture, there's like first young love, there's like this murder and like investigation and like running in the woods and car chases and like there's just a lot happening. But it did feel like a little bit crowded, but not to the point where I was like, okay, like this is too much. I've read books where I'm just like, holy shit, like I can't even keep up. There's too many plot lines. But again, like I said, my thoughts here, I don't read a lot of YA anymore because I find it too cringy for me to read, but it didn't feel like young. Like it didn't feel like I'm trying to think, like the early Harry Potter. Like that was cringe for me to read. I read Harry Potter as an adult, by the way. So the early books, I was like, oh my God, I'm like crawling in my like skin, like the teen angst. I was just like, oh, I'm like, I don't need to read about this. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. The one thing I will say is I grew up watching a lot of hockey. My younger brother plays hockey. My older brother played hockey. My dad played hockey. So I grew up around a lot of hockey, and the hockey in this was like some of it was so bad. I was like, okay, girl, we got to do a little bit more research. But I really loved learning more about tribal culture and what it means to be like a non-member. I can't remember the actual word that they use. I don't think it's non-member. There's a word for it that I can't think of off the top of my head. But I thought this was really, really well done. Also, the cover is just stunning. Obviously, you can see won a lot of awards and things like that. So I would definitely recommend this one. Then I read Emma. I want to try to read more classics. This is not the edition that I have. I have the Penguin Classics deluxe edition, which I love because it has deckled edges and it's kind of modern looking. Anyway, so this is about a witty, spoiled, intelligent Emma who plays matchmaker in her small village. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was pretty like run of the mill classic. I didn't feel like it was super hard to read, but I will say like it's like relatively hard. I listened to the audiobook while I read the physical book, which is one of my biggest pro tips if you want to read and be more engaged is to first of all, don't use Audible. That actually reminds me, I think I paid for an Audible membership and I need to cancel it. So I'm going to make sure I do that after this video. But use Libby, get a library card. You get free audiobooks, free ebooks. Obviously, you might have to wait in line sometimes, but we can be patient. Let's prove to the boomers that we don't have instant gratification problems, okay? And I will say the one thing I found about this was I loved Emma's jabs at the men in this book because it's written in that time period where they're not basically just being like, hey, this guy's a dick. Like, she's calling him a dick in old language to his face. Okay. It's so good. And she calls him out, and it was amazing. And I love that. So, yeah, I really did enjoy this as a classic. Okay, then I read There's Always This Year on Basketball and Ascension. This is a collection of essays that reflect on the author's life and how basketball intertwined with it. I gave this 4 stars. Oh my gosh, y'all, the writing was fucking crazy. And I now want to read his other book, which something it's the wolf in a tracksuit picture. I can't remember the name of the book off the top of my head, but I also want to read that. His writing is just like, oh, it's just so good. And I think it's because he has, to my recollection, I think he has a background in like poetry, and he just like, oh my God, I just like, I get angry at how good it is because just like the way that he described things, and it just really like hit you in the fucking heart, and it was so good. So definitely pick this up if you haven't read it already. Next, for my book club, oh wait, also, sorry, we read this for the other book club at work, so good choice. I can't remember if we read, okay, The Deep Sky we also read for our book club, and I think that was the only other one I mentioned so far. Okay. Next, we read this for my book club, which is Peach Blossom Spring. And this is a three generational Chinese family story of finding a place to call home. I gave this 3 stars. This isn't my favorite generational story. I think, you know, when you read a certain book, like Pachinko in this example, where it's a generational story, and it's just like so overwhelmingly good that you like unconsciously compare it to every other generational story that you read. This was very well done. I did enjoy it. I think it was interesting because I can't remember in Pachinko if anyone in the family immigrates to the US, because I read it like 2 or 3 years ago now. But this shows like the strain on relationships once the younger generation moves and immigrates to the US. And I really, again, enjoyed isn't the right word, but like enjoyed seeing those dynamics and seeing how it's really hard to maintain a family in that way, and how much the older generation doesn't understand the new generation because they've immigrated and they've changed in their eyes, right? Like they have to adapt to this new culture in America, and they feel like they're losing their Chinese culture. And like, I think it was well done. And also the cover is beautiful. There's another cover that I think is actually even more beautiful, but this is the cover. This is the edition that I have. Okay. Then I read Exit Interview, The Life and Death of My Ambitious Career. This is a look at the early days of Amazon from Christie's perspective. Again, I didn't give this a rating because it was a memoir. I actually listened to this as an audiobook on a long drive to a friend of mine's wedding. I found this to be very fascinating. It made me dislike Amazon more, even though I unfortunately am caught up in the Amazon machine of using Amazon Prime, etc. For certain things. I try hard not to use it too much. But this just offers you like a really inside look at the early days of Amazon and what exactly that was like, and the kind of like nightmare that it really was. And I think it's still like that, but I think companies like this, like startups like Amazon, like, you know, I don't know if Uber is like this, but there's like a couple that are like so intense in the beginning, and it's still small enough where, you know, like, you know, a lot of it, the higher up people, and I just found it very interesting. She also reads the audiobook, which I always enjoy when it's a memoir and it's read by the author. So I definitely would recommend this one if you're interested in learning more about that. And then we read this for the other book club at work, When We Cease to Understand the World. This is a fictional examination of the lives of real life scientists and thinkers whose discoveries resulted in moral consequences beyond their imagining. I gave this 2 stars. Most of the people in the book club didn't realize that this was fictional, me, myself included. I thought this was like a nonfiction book about these scientists, and some of it I was like, oh my God, this is really questionable. There's a lot of grown men being with young underage women, which is like, can we just not? I understand that, like, you know, quote, it was just the times back then. Still disgusting, okay? So my thoughts here, I said, while it was interesting, some of this was way above my head and limited. Like, I don't know a lot about science and math. Like, that is just not my area of expertise. So some of it was like, girl, I don't understand these like physics theories and whatever. So I think this was, overall, it was like interesting, but I was just like, this is like too much for my little peanut brain on this. Okay, then I read Lessons in Chemistry. This is about a scientist left as a widow who takes on a TV cooking show and uses science and empowers women. I gave this 3 stars. I think it was a little bit overhyped, but overall, it was like very sweet and very cute. And I loved her relationship with her widower. Is that what it's called? Widower? I don't know. Her ex-husband, who unfortunately passed away in the book. And I need to watch the show. That's it. Okay, and then I read Detransition Baby. This is about 3 women's lives collide after an unexpected pregnancy and forces them to confront their deepest desires around gender, sex, motherhood, etc. I gave this 4 stars. This was so different from anything I've ever read in a good way. I think the really like deep look at motherhood and gender was so well done. There were some weird things in this book though that I was interested in. We read this as part of my book club, and at certain points they're like dead naming one of the trans people in the book, and I was just like, like I was kind of confused by that because it's such like a progressive book. I don't know, it was very interesting. But yeah, did a really good job of examining how being a woman goes along with motherhood, and yeah, it was just really well done. Okay, this was a book that I read for the other book club called Dearborn. Again, literally something I would never even have known existed. This is a short story collection about the lives of people in Dearborn, Michigan. I gave this 2 stars. This was pretty meh for me. Like I said, I liked some of the stories, but overall, pretty meh. Like, I don't think I'd recommend it unless you're interested in learning more about Dearborn. There's definitely some funny moments in this book. I was laughing on the subway, but not like my favorite short story collection. Okay, then I read The 4 Tendencies. This is a research presented on the different personality profiles and how to leverage yours. I gave this 2 stars. My thoughts here, like I say, as much as I love research on stuff like this, it felt choppy. It felt very like tactical guide to personality profiles. I think it's good, again, for that practical application, but she also wrote The Happiness Project, maybe, and I felt like that was more of a story. I think I wanted her to be more like Brené Brown, but she isn't. So yeah, again, this is interesting if you want to learn more about your personality profile and then what that looks like in real life. And then also, for example, if your partner or someone you work with is a different personality style, how you can work with them better, what motivates them, what demotivates them, etc. Again, I think it's more of like a practical guide than necessarily like talking too much about the research, which is the part that I'm more interested in. Okay. Y'all. Okay, so this book is Blood in the Garden, The Flagrant History of the 1990s New York Knicks. This was a book that we read for my other book club, and girl, I could not be less bored by this fucking book. I couldn't be more bored. Anyway, I gave this 2 stars. No, this wasn't for me. This book was not written for me. I only read it because it was for our book club, and I just like hate. Well, I started it and I was like, okay, I just like don't really give a shit about any of this stuff. So there's that. Then I read this for my book club, which is Kim Ji-young, born in 1982. This is about a Korean woman who leaves her job to care for her newborn, and then she starts to show strange symptoms, and it's decided that she's in psychosis. I gave this 4 stars. This is a short read, and I wanted more. I got to the end and I was like, no. I'm like, I need more. And it's a really, really interesting look at women and how they experience life, but also why they're treated in a certain way and the signs of psychosis that she experiences is basically pushing up against these norms, right? Like, why can't the husband take care of the child? Why can't I speak a certain way because I'm a woman? Oh my God, it was so good. And it's a short read. I think it's I want to say it's less than 200 pages. It's like pretty short, but yeah, like I said, I wanted more. Also, I like this cover better than the cover that I have. So yeah, there's that. Okay, then I read Babel. This is about 4 students at Oxford who are studying translation, but they shortly realize that it isn't as good as it seems. I gave this 4 stars. R.F. Kuang, The writing is so good. The character building, so good. The world building, so good. Kept me intrigued. There was definitely some slow parts. I know why she set up the background, but I think that's sometimes what I struggle with in fantasy is like sometimes it just like takes a little bit too long. But I love her writing. It's really interesting because of all of the books that she's written, I read Yellowface first, which is so different than this. And I did pick up the first book of the Poppy War trilogy, which I will be reading this year. So stay tuned for that. I'm really, really excited about that. And yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this. It's got that like gothic, dark academia feel, which I really, really enjoyed. Yeah, so overall, great. Would definitely recommend. Okay, then I read Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune. This is the sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea. The Department of Magical Youth is once again at it to get the orphans. I gave this 4 stars. I did this as a buddy read with 2 people that I work with, so shout out to y'all. And I was just happy that it wasn't like a tragic follow-up to the first book. I think I always am worried reading the second book in a series. I feel like there's one more. It might be a trilogy. I can't remember, but it's a very like cozy read. House in the Cerulean Sea. If you haven't read it, like please read it. It is so cozy and like cute, and I loved it so much. And this was a good sequel, and I think TJ Klune did a great job. And yeah, just like very quippy and fun, and like, but also addressing serious topics in a more kind of like lighthearted way. Like it didn't feel like so like you were drowning in sadness because of the certain topics. Okay. Then I read Forager, Field Notes for Surviving a Family Cult. This is about Michelle, who was born into an ultra religious cult called The Field. This book is her experience in the cult and then escaping it. Again, no rating because it's a memoir. I personally love to learn about cults. I'm very fascinated by cults, especially when it's a firsthand account. And I hadn't actually heard of The Field before. Funny enough, I must have started or listened to some of this audiobook because some of it was a little bit familiar to me. I listened to this as part of a long drive. I can't remember which one, but I really enjoy this. So if you like to learn about cults from a firsthand account, definitely read this. It's also really interesting because they're taught to like live off the land. And so she has each chapter is essentially dedicated to a particular like part of nature or a leaf or a berry or whatever. And I think it was really just like well done overall. I listened to the audiobook version of this and she reads it and it was very good. Okay. Then I read I'll Be Gone in the Dark, One Woman's Obsessive Search for the Golden State Killer. This is about a true crime account of the man who terrorized California, the Golden State Killer, and I gave this 4 stars. I also listened to the audiobook. I listened to that audiobook and this one on the same drive. Would I recommend this? Because I was reading it, I was listening to it at night, at like the end of my drive, and I was getting a little scaredy cat. Okay, I was a little scared. And this book was very well done, and the end had me in tears due to it's been out for too long for me to like be giving spoilers, but the author passes away, and it's like there's a beautiful dedication to her, and I was like, I remember sobbing in the car, and I was like, am I gonna have to pull over? Like it was but it was really well done. Like the research and the way it was presented was just like really, really well done. And basically her friends come together in the end to put the book together for her, and I was like, I hope my friends if I ever were to write a book and pass away, that my friends would do that too. Okay, this we read as part of my other book club, The Island at the Center of the World, which is basically about the Dutch colony that predated the original colonies in the United States. And this is its history. I gave it 2 stars. I don't think my brain loves history. It's really, really hard for me to enjoy books like this. It's hard because I want to learn more about the history of the world and not just America, just like understanding, but it's like really hard for me to connect with it. So I didn't enjoy this book very much. I think there was some interesting, especially with the original tribal communities in the United States and how they interacted with them. I found very interesting. I was like curious if this was actually how they were treated or not. In terms from like, they made it sound like they were treated well and, you know, they were trading with them fairly and like whatever. I was like, okay, like how real is that? I don't know. Okay. Then I read another TJ Klune, which was Under the Whispering Door. This is about a reaper who shows up at Wallace's funeral. Wallace is the main character and brings him to a tea shop where he's promised help in crossing over. I gave this 3 stars. I thought this book did a really good job of examining grief and love and life while still being lighthearted and cozy. I think TJ Klune just does a really good job in his, I haven't read any of his like older books. These are some of his newer works. And I think he just does a really good job of addressing things in a way that's not like so confronting and like so in your face. It's like more underlying and you just like pick up on things. I was crying through like most of this book. I think it was really well done. Okay. Then I read The Secret Life of Bees. This is about a woman, a girl, Lily, who has a blurry memory of her mother's death, and she sets out to figure out what actually happened. I don't know what the fuck happened with this like period.y over here. Girl who's going, I don't know, who's editing this because it's not me. I gave this 5 stars. I loved every second of this book. It's short, it's sweet, it's such a powerful and heartbreaking story. So many ups and downs, and I was just like, I hope Lily figures it out. And she does. Spoiler alert, she does. Also, this book is like very old. Well, not maybe very old, but there's no spoilers at this point. But I would highly recommend this book. It's set in like the, oh gosh, maybe this 70s, 80s South America. No, sorry. The South in the United States, not South America, the country, or the whatever. Okay. Then I read Out of Office, The Big Problem and Bigger Promise of Working from Home. This is a look at the conversation about returning to offices or not. I gave this 4 stars. I found this super interesting and well done. I highlighted a lot of this. It addressed a lot of the critical aspects and arguments around should people go back to the office full time? Are people more productive at home, in the office, etc.? It's interesting because the 2 people that wrote it are a married couple. I think so. And they started like working from home long before the pandemic happened. So they have a different insight. And I thought this was really well done. The research was really well done. And yeah, I found it really fascinating. Oh my God. This is a book that we read for my book club, which I'm so disappointed about because I always feel bad if we read a bad book for book club. But this is called Jawbone. It's about a friend group who convenes after school and leads each other through these like weird rituals to this made up god. But then how does one of the friends end up held hostage in one of the teacher's cabins? I gave this 1 star. My thoughts, again, why can I spell? I genuinely don't even want to talk about it. Like that's how bad it was. There was so much shit that happens in this book that's so like just weird, like straight up weird as fuck. And I was like, I just can't wait for this book to be over. Don't read this. I don't know. It's just weird and not in a good way, you know, like not like horror weird can be good. Like this was horror weird bad. Okay. Thank you for that. Then I read another S.A. Cosby book, Blacktop Wasteland. This is about an ex-getaway driver who is asked to do a job and he agrees because his family is really tight for money and it goes wrong and he's thrust into this like grimy underworld of crime. I gave this 5 stars. Again, S.A. Cosby does it again, folks. His writing is so phenomenal, sucks you right in. One warning I will give about S.A. Cosby. I read Blacktop Wasteland and oh gosh, what's the other one I've read? My chair is creaking. Oh no, why can't I remember and why can't I find it on my bookshelf? But okay. Oh wait, it's over here. Is it? Oh my God, I'm so annoyed. I thought it was over here. Oh, Fraser Billy Tears. Okay, it's all the way to the top. I also love Fraser Billy Tears. He writes very graphically violent scenes. So if you don't want to hear about like brain tissue left on a bat after someone is beaten, this book ain't for you. Okay. But his writing is like phenomenal. Okay. Then I read this for my book club, Beautiful Country. This is a story of a family who immigrates to the United States and their struggle to survive. It mainly is from, obviously it's a memoir, so it's based on the daughter's perspective and her experiences and family dynamics. Again, no rating because it's a memoir. I would recommend it. I wish there was some more from the parents' perspective. Oh wait, also this wasn't for my book club. I recommended this book for my other book club and it got voted on, so that was fun. Because I think it's hard coming from a child's perspective because this is her reflecting on her memory. So how much of it was, I don't want to say real because I don't think that's the right word, but I think some of it I would have enjoyed to hear more from her parents' perspectives. But otherwise, I really enjoyed this. Again, it shows. I think it's based in the 80s or 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I believe. Immigrating to the US in New York specifically, which if you don't know, I live in New York. And it was really interesting to hear about the struggle to survive for these immigrants. And it's just like heartbreaking. Like there's some parts where I'm just like, holy shit, like this is what people experienced and experience. Okay, and then I read The Midnight Library. This is about Nora who finds herself in the Midnight Library, and then she has a chance to make things right in her life. Up until now, she's really like regretted and like has been miserable in her life. I gave this 4 stars. I thought the concept was very interesting, and I think it was executed pretty well. I heard this was like a very like mixed review type of book. I personally think it was executed really well, especially because I think the concept in theory can be so confusing. But I think Matt Haig did a really good job of, I just think he did a good job of like putting the concept together and it wasn't super confusing to follow in any way. Also, if this is really what purgatory is like, I think I'd be happy to go if this is where things went. Okay. Then I read Trust. Also you can find, when I was lazy, I would just copy. Instead of writing my own synopsis, I would just copy from Goodreads. An immersive story and literary puzzle that engages readers in a quest for the truth while confronting the deceptions that often live at the heart of personal relationships, the reality warping force of capital, and the ease with which power can manipulate facts. Okay, so I gave this 3 stars. I think I need to reread this book because my thoughts here, as you can see, this is definitely on me. I didn't really fully know about the book before I read it. I kind of do that because I like to keep myself a little bit in the dark, but I really should just like read the back of books before I read them because I wasn't paying attention enough to see the connections throughout the whole thing. I wasn't aware that I should be looking for these connections. So like thinking back on it, it's really well done. So I probably, if I reread it, I'd probably give it a higher rating because I would be paying attention more to the connections of the book. Okay, and lastly, the last book I read of 2024 was Down the Drain by Julia Fox, which I was so excited for, and a look into her crazy ass life. Again, no rating because it's a memoir, but my thoughts were, wow, I didn't know much about her, but this book was a fucking roller coaster, y'all. I'm not a celebrity person, and the only thing I knew about Julia Fox before this was Uncut Gems, and that's it, okay? And girl, there is a lot of drugs, a lot of intimacy, sometimes not good intimacy, and just like really hard struggles, but also success, but controlling relationships. I don't know. Girl, her life's crazy. I hope she's like more calm, not more calm. I hope she has a more calm life from here on out because she dealt with enough fucking craziness in her early years. But also the book, do I have it? Ma'am, absolutely fucking snatched. Okay, like go off. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. So those are the 39 books. 30. Oh wait, sorry. There's one more. I was like, I know I definitely read 39. Then I read Filthy Animals. This is a collection of linked short stories about the lives of creatives in the Midwest and their quest for love and desire. I gave this 3 stars. This one was a little bit weird, but in a good way. I think I just like think I really love linked short story collections. I just think they do such a good job, like when they're interlocked in a way that's not like super obvious always, but like just does a really good job of like character examination. Again, going back to the characters, you know me. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. And I think the only thing that I didn't enjoy about it was like some of the topics and like there was a little bit of weird like sexual undertones, which I'm not against, but I think it just like kind of was a little bit not my vibe. But yes, those were the 39 books I read this year. Let me know what books were your favorite that you read this year in a comment below so I can potentially add them to my never ending TBR to read. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, and I will see you in my next one. I am going to read the Justin Baldoni. I don't know if it's a lawsuit because he's suing the New York Times. I originally was going to do a live reaction to it like I've done for the Matt Gaetz and Blake Lively's initial kind of like, it's not like even emotion, it's just like essentially like a threat to sue Justin Baldoni and etc. But it's 87 pages, girl, and I can't do it live. It's going to take me too long. So I'm basically going to read the lawsuit on my iPad, highlight things, and then I'll do a video on that. And yeah, so that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a wonderful 2024 and cheers to a good 2025. And I will see you in my next one.